When I don't have anything selected on the canvas, so I don't have any visual selected like this, everything is unselected, so I can do something on the whole filters of the page. So on this particular visual, we're able to filter this visual down to show only the top 5 cities. We're able to filter this to show only the bottom 5 cities. What if I would like to filter the whole page to show a particular description or something like that? So for example, if I want this whole report to be about the consumer or the corporate customer segment, so what I could do is I'm going to make use of this filters pane. You can see that since I have nothing selected, the options I have on filters pane is filters on this page and filters on all pages. So add data fields here. So if I drag my segments and I drop these on filters on this page, now I can decide to select corporate. So when I click on corporate, that means the whole report, you can see it is running. The whole report now is showing the results for corporate customers only. So this whole page now is for corporate customers only. If I check the box for consumer, that means I'm currently displaying sales results for consumer and corporate. And if I decide to uncheck everything, it means I am showing the full business view for my customer segment. So you can use filters pane to do something like that. But if you don't want to use filters pane, because eventually filters pane is kind of like a very big panel, you can use a visual known as slicer. So if I want to create a slicer now, for example, let me just collapse the filters pane. So I can come to my visualizations pane here and click on slicer. So when I click on slicer, I have this visual placeholder. I'm going to drag this to the top right hand side. So a filters, a slicer for filtering would only accept one value alone, just one field. So what I want to put on this slicer is my segment. So I'm going to drop segment here. I can either check the box or I can drag it here. So when I drop segment there, I can decide to expand this visual or any visual I like by clicking on this focus mode icon. So this is like the visual header. So anytime you select a visual, depending on the position of that visual, you always have these visual headers active. Sometimes it is at the top, sometimes it is at the bottom, depending on where that visual is positioned. So now I'm going to go to focus mode so you can see things clearer. So I have my slicer selected and I'm going to click on focus mode. So once I go to focus mode, I can see only the slicer on my canvas. And what I'm trying to do is I want to do something like if I hover my mouse towards the top right side corner, you will see I have these two icons here. So this one that looks like an arrow down or like a drop down is telling me to select the type of slicer. So when I click on this guy, I can see that because I have a text value in that slicer, I have two options. I can either use it as a list or I can use it as a drop down. I'm going to show you how you use both. So if I choose a drop down instead and I go back to my report, so what I'll see is this. So I can just manage my space when I use a drop down. So drop down is a way to manage space on your slicer. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit. So now if I want to do the same thing I did with the filters pane, I can easily click on the drop down on this slicer and I can pick corporate. If I hold my control key, I can pick corporate and consumer. Or if I just want to uncheck it back, so I just go back and click again inside and it is unchecked. And this is how I use a slicer as a drop down list. But if I don't want it as a drop down, I can also change it back to list. So I'm going to go back to focus mode. Then I want to change it from drop down to a normal list. I'll go back to reports. So I have it back as a list, and when you have it as a list like this, it means you need to take more real estate space depending on how long the values you have in that column is or how much values you have in in that column. So I have 3 values here, but one way you can manage a list is to format this list to show as a button. So instead of showing as a single line list, you want it to show as a button. So I can come to this format. So I'm going to click on format here while my slicer is selected, and under general controls, I'm going to say the orientation should change from vertical to horizontal. So once it changes to horizontal, I now have a list that is responsive. So this now looks like a button. So now I can click on corporate, I can click on home office, and the whole report just responds accordingly. So I'm going to leave it at this. So I want it to look like a button this way.